I think there's people out there that really want me to say sorry for using AI, and I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all.
So all the amazing stuff that you've been playing with, obviously you've been playing around with them for a lot longer than we would imagine. You had this ready by June to go. You've been using these tools for a while, and they're unrecognizable to me in most cases, which is why my guesses as to how much AI you'd used were off.
Yeah.
Because I was only basing my assessment on what I'm familiar with.
Sure.
And so you're using tools that I'm either not familiar with, or you're using them in ways that I'm not familiar with. And you've had them for longer than anybody else thinks that they've been available. Tell me about that. How long? What have you been using? How long for? How are you using them? Is the problem that I don't have the right tools, or that I don't know how to use them?
The tools are out there, available to pretty much everyone. I mean, of course, we have our own custom comfy UI that works for us, that we're happy with. I really hate the terminology proprietary in AI as a space, because it implies some sort of business moat, but all AI is really based on the same open source papers. Getting it to work for you, that's the trick, right? And, the tools are out there. Things like Wonder Dynamics that we used a lot of on this movie, readily available to people. Obviously, there's things like Midjourney, Kling, Minimax, there's things like, obviously, Midjourney. We used Adobe Firefly to generate our background and foreground images. That was
right.
And then we also built some custom LoRa's as well. For those of you that don't know what they are, it's a sort of way of training a much smaller data set on top of somebody else's bigger data set. There's this idea that people say, oh, we're building our own model. Very, very few people are building their own model. It's extremely expensive. It's for the big players. What you can do is build your own LoRa's on top of other people's models that give you a sense of refinement over what it is that you're trying to achieve. So all the tools are out there. I think this space is about pioneering. This is like the early days of film. Like I've said to you before, it's somebody invented cameras, somebody invented lights in the late 19th century, and then for 10 years people are figuring out how do you put them together, what is editing, what's the language of cinema. We are a technological industry, make no doubt. The only reason film as an art form exists is because of technology. Technological innovation has allowed for us to create what I believe is the only true universal language on earth.
It's interesting.
If you look at editing and what editing is, I can watch a film in Japanese with no subtitles, and I know what the close-up means. I know.
Okay.
There's a universal language built in that was created by those early pioneers who adopted the technology. Most of them will have jumped from the theatre space. And
right.
They will have adopted this sense of new technology and crafted new language, new workflows, new pipeline that has led to the 110-year industry that we currently know today. And along comes a new technological innovation, one very different to the ones that we've had before in terms of how you craft a story. And now we get to play that same game again. We get to be mad scientists. We get to, how do you put these tools together? What's the pipeline? How do you make this work? How do you tell new stories? How do you innovate? How do you pioneer within it? That makes this like an exciting Wild West that we're currently in. And, that really is the beauty of what we do here at AiMation Studios and the parent company Pigeon Shine, is we are a mad laboratory. We're trying to figure out what the future of storytelling can be, and how do you put a pipeline together? How do you create infrastructure around that? How do you create jobs around that? What does the future of employment inside entertainment look like? What are the roles? What are the names for those roles? How do you retrain people with skills from the previous iteration? Does somebody with a background as a production designer suddenly become more valuable than the director, for instance?
Right.
You could argue their knowledge of cinematic history and how to describe objects makes them a much more valuable asset. Same goes for anybody. Let's say you're on the sound team. Currently, you're the boom operator. your ability to know direction, to describe where sound should come from, how it should feel, that makes you more valuable than potentially the director now. In terms of creating this story, and I really think that we're marching towards very, very quickly a future that looks split into two, where you have the more studio kind of picture system, which is what we really are. We're trying to build this new iteration of what would Warner Brothers have built now, instead of in 1904. And I think that is a lot less director-led. Although it says on Where the Robots Grow that I directed it, what it definitely did was write it. The process of making that film was much more collaborative than any of the movies that I've done as a traditional director, where everybody's sort of valued input normally on a creative level became much more integral to the end product here than it would on a traditional set.
Why did was there a kind of a functional reason why everybody's view needed to be bubbled up to the surface?
Well, I mean, really, at the base of all of this, we're talking about large language models, right?
Right.
And, I can go into a much more philosophical realm if you want, but from my perspective, all of reality as you know it is really constituted as language. It's why these LLMs work in the first place. There is nothing in the world that can't be broken down into its language description, stored as language data, and then regurgitated in a context-based system, which is how we tell stories to each other, right? Like I compress my day. If you say to me, how was my day yesterday? I don't recount to you in accurate detail everything that happened in that day. I compressed it into a story and I saved it as story data. I say, yeah, it was really good. I came to work for a bit and then I went and hung out with my kid. Only if I'm pressed, say in a situation where the police want to talk to me, will I then begin this game of guessing the correct context. So I'll start to be like, well, I normally wake up. I got up about 7 a.m. and I start to play this guess the next token game for how my day unfolded. And I decompress the data through language. It's very much how LLMs work, but they do it in a very sort of long-winded manner. Like they really do try to describe every intricate detail of yesterday. They miss the storytelling element that a human has that I really think defines us and our conscious experience. It's lived through storytelling. And when you bring a crew of people together with a vast cinematic knowledge and expertise in their specific area, but the goal isn't, on a traditional set, there's 200 people, 300 people, in some cases. And, you really kind of it becomes a job of marshalling the crew. There's this saying, it's like going to war, ridiculous saying, but it's a saying. And really, I think what they're talking about is on a traditional film set, you're kind of trying to sort of steer this large volume of people towards a specific goal.
Right.
When there's far fewer of you, 9 people on Where the Robots Grow.
My guess was 20, but I did guess that some of those were family and friends who just did the driving. Yeah, for sure. Big shout out to my little brother. He did loads of picking stuff up for us, hence the credit. But no, when there's 9 of you, and actually your goal is to use AI to create this sort of layered approach, which is what we did. The robots themselves are separate from the backgrounds, they're separate from the sky generations, separate from the sound, but they've all got to work cohesively together. Now these 9 people are all heard because there's no marshalling people around. There's no herding the crew. There's simply, how do we do this in a way that we all love? And so you end up with a much more collaborative effort that feels, yes, you want that one person that's like, okay, I'm kind of making the final decision here. But that voice is far less commanding in terms of what that end product will be. And so I think that is very much one version of how the future of film looks. Well, it does lead to an interesting question. While I remember it, I want to ask this. If you had unlimited budget, what would be your ideal crew size?
9. Yeah, I'm not joking. This was, somebody who's made 10 films before. This was genuinely the most wonderful experience I've had making a movie. And it's because it felt like it felt like working with a group of people that really cared. And, I talk about this quite a lot. There's this concept within the anti-AI community that using artificial intelligence is somehow lazy. And I actually just wholeheartedly refute that. It's nonsense. Especially if you take the approach that we take internally here. It's about taking the skills that you've got and applying them in new methodology that gets you to an end result that you simply could not have achieved without $100 million before. And there's nothing lazy about that. And to be quite honest, like, I'm just going to say this. If making it so that my team, my crew, and myself can come to work at 8 a.m., be done by 6 p.m., go home to their wives, their partners, their boyfriends. I get to go home. I get to tuck in my 2-year-old every night. I give everybody Fridays off here at Pigeon Shrine. We don't work Fridays. So everybody gets Friday, Saturday, Sunday, weekend. But we get the job done. Everybody gets paid more than they used to get paid. And they get to work sensible hours and have a social life. And if that is what somebody's accusing me of being lazy of, I would say 2 things. You maybe need to readdress your priorities in life. And 2, I'm pretty sure that you've got a form of Stockholm syndrome to an industry that does not care about your well-being. That's how I feel about it. And so I make no apologies for putting the care and well-being of the people that I work with that are close to me at the forefront of how I think about using the tools that are available to me. And, I think there's people out there that really want me to say sorry for using AI, and I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all.
I want to ask you about the economics a little bit more, just briefly. If we go from this image where with the kind of the old school model, the current model is where you've got a handful of people at the top of the pyramid with all the power, all the money, and then lots of people working underneath who are kind of hanging off of that, and an audience at the bottom, vast audience that's watching a relatively small amount of movies. Sure. Maybe we'll go back 10, 20 years to that model, but with democratization of entertainment generally, that gets flattened so that the same number of eyeballs are watching a much larger amount of content, but fewer eyeballs per content.
Sure.
That has implications for the economics of all this and how much money anybody could ever hope to make. And I'm thinking about your crew of 9 people, for example. It's ideal for you and perfect for you. Lots of people who will be aspiring to want to work in this industry, which means, in theory, a scenario where instead of having a handful of big, powerful studios, you end up with lots and lots of tiny little studios following your model.
Sure.
Can you see a way forward where a movie like Where the Robots Grow can make a lot less money and still support the crew, still support the team?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the model already exists without artificial intelligence. It's called YouTube.
Okay.
The YouTube creator economy. I mean, look, let's just backtrack a little bit. I spoke earlier about distribution. Distribution is fundamentally broken.
Sorry, because at least the question, why did you upload it to YouTube and not do this? So,
yeah, I mean,
sorry, that was yeah, I am getting very excited now.
That's okay. Look, distribution economically is broken. The economics of the film industry have collapsed. No one wants to admit it, but it's true, especially at the independent level. The economics of independent cinema, we go back earlier to what I just discussed about how you get the film greenlit.
Yes.
Okay. So you do a pre-sale to North America because you got so-and-so to agree, but they're going to eat 300 grand of your 500 grand pre-sale. And then you go and get a bit of tax credit, but you've got to give another 20% of that away to cash flow facilities. So you end up actually having to make the film for 150 grand. And you've got to pay all the crew out of that. So now everybody's doing favored nations, everybody's getting lower rates than they would. They're freelancers, so they have to last a lot longer on a lot less.
Yes.
And this is apparently acceptable. I do not think that is acceptable. What I think the model that we're building here is proving is that, okay, so let's say a film I would have done in the past, Assailant, one of my traditional movies, 120 crew. Well, my argument now would be, okay, well, for the money that film cost, I could go and raise that again, but I'll actually make 12 movies And all 120 people will be separated into their individual teams, and each of them will go and make the film. But the pie is bigger for each film. So now everybody can be paid better.
Right.
Everybody can go home on time. Everyone can have Fridays off. There is a sustainable economic model, because now I only need one of those films to be financially successful to justify the existence of all 12.
Right.
This doesn't have to be a scenario where, as a studio, you get rid of everybody. This can be a scenario where you can hedge your bets a little more. You can be a bit more free with what you decide to make. Maybe Fade Out is perfect for this model. It can be in my group of 10 movies that I'm making. I know one of them is exactly what a distributor is looking for, but the other 9, they're wild cards. Maybe they're incredible. Maybe they are something that the audience doesn't even know they want yet, and certainly the distributors don't know that they want yet. Well, let's do it, because we can afford to now. The economics work. And from a eyeballs perspective, how many people are working on any given show? Let's pick a show from the CW, for instance. 300-400 crew, up in Vancouver, working their ass off, and then it comes out to a weekly viewership of 800,000. But then there's YouTubers with 2 million subscribers regularly getting more than that within a day of viewing. One people cruise, the economics work. That person earns enough from CPM advertising revenue to justify what they are doing, justify what you are doing. And there, to me, lies the real future of the film industry, a fusing of the two, where big budget looking storytelling fuses with YouTube content creator economics.
Right.
That is the future of where this is all going. And also, look, from the big Hollywood perspective, they're going to be forced into a sense of change in the coming years. They're not going to want to, but they will have no choice. There is an incoming form of movie piracy that does not exist right now that will fundamentally shift how the big studios deal with the intellectual property they own. Currently, if you're, there's somewhere in Taiwan, there's a factory making 300,000 Nike footballs now and flooding the market with them. They know that maybe 5% of them will sell, but that's enough to cover the revenue to justify the factory that's making the fake Nike footballs. What are you going to do if you're Disney and you're 150 million in the hole already, week 6 of production on a new Pirates of the Caribbean film? Johnny Depp won't come out of his trailer, and the budget's ballooning before your eyes, and then your PA comes up to you as the producer and says, do you know there's 300,000 Pirates of the Caribbean films on YouTube every day? Disney will have to spend millions and millions and millions in pulling down this rogue content, and it will become a sort of losing game for them. I think that's good for independent creators in the sense that it means that audiences will start to be trained that existing big budget intellectual property is probably AI and not of the quality that you would want. And I think all content will have a degree of AI to it, but there's a big argument that I get a lot. I got asked this question yesterday, about, well, maybe people shouldn't have the right to make stuff. Maybe there should be like a giant hill they have to climb over to get their product told. I don't agree. I think that is such a sort of establishment mentality to let's keep the peasants out, which really riles me up. I think there's a real class element to the anti-AI movement that I find offensive personally, and we can go into that shortly. But I think what we're looking here is curation. A future where you build your own studios, or maybe you're like, it's just you and your friend, or maybe you're a solo creator. In that respect, it's like a true director's vision, as opposed to the more collaborative vision of where the robots grow. And they both exist, and they create this sort of creator economy around themselves. And, that doesn't mean they're getting less eyeballs. Like, if you're the Chris Nolan of the AI filmmaking generation, then maybe 3-4 million people watch your film on YouTube, and the economics work for you. Mm-hmm. That isn't why we released Where the Robots Grow on YouTube. We did it because I'm, somebody who is kind of vocal about my sort of distaste for the distribution model that exists. I think it's economically bad. It's economically bad for my investors. It's economically bad for independent creators. And this year is proving it's economically not even working for the studios anymore. So, you know, there was an opportunity with this film to sell it to the traditional model. You know, and obviously there was internal discussions. The sale point that we were offered was high enough that I could have funded this studio for the next year. And, you know, after a lot of convincing and a lot of hard conversations on my end, I really pushed for, no, let's give it away. And the reason for that is to make a statement about what AI is capable of right now, and to really drive with what we consider are the next steps of this. Like, we want to be at the forefront of this, you know, fusion of storytelling with, you know, a sort of content creator economic strategy. We'll be building our own stuff in-house that really tries to tackle with that. And essentially, I think what we can do here is, I'm not sitting here pretending to be, you know, indie film messiah or any of this nonsense. You know, we're going to build an economic model that works for us as a company, that functions for us. You know, and there's plenty of examples out there in the business world that are adjacent to the entertainment space that are proving these models work. And the more of us that do it, the more it encourages other groups of people to band together and start their own studios. And we kind of get to a place where, at the moment, the entire discussion with AI is, what's AI going to do to Hollywood? Okay, fine. I understand Hollywood is its own infrastructure and it's its own economic system. You know, and it will affect a lot of people as it goes through this upheaval. And that I have genuine sympathy for. But at the same time, we're not from Hollywood. I'm not in Hollywood. We are currently sitting in Coventry in the United Kingdom. And so for the rest of us, for the rest of the global creator community, the question now becomes, do you need Hollywood? Can you build your own Hollywood? And I think this is a statement that people have tried to say for years. As long as I've been a film fan, I've read people going, oh, they're building a new Hollywood somewhere else. You hear it a lot. But for the first time ever, it's actually viable. And that is what really interests me. And so I hope everybody enjoyed our free Where the Robots Grow. It's a first step into where I think we're going. And economically, this one won't work for us, economically speaking. We've got a big picture vision here.
So you're expecting this to be a loss leader?
I'm expecting this to do exactly what it was meant to do, which is to open the conversations up about where we are, what's going on. It absolutely will open conversations up for me in terms of expansion and what this studio could become. And really a footnote in terms of what we're trying to build here. Like, I didn't set out with this project to try to make Hollywood go, oh wow, AiMation Studios are here. I set out with this project to make the rest of the filmmaking community go, oh, interesting. And then say, hey, we're going on our own journey economically, that I think the future of the entertainment industry looks like, a much more gaming-based model for how we do things going forward. We're inviting you to watch. We're inviting people to either get on board in terms of support or in terms of essentially going, fine, we'll go and build our own one too. And the more of us that do it, one of us will crack it. And that will be good for all of us. Maybe it's us, maybe it's someone else. If it's someone else, thank you very much, we'll adopt it.